So good evening, everybody. I'm Betsy Fischer Martin, and I'm the Executive Director of the Women in Politics Institute here at American University. Welcome to tonight's conversation as part of our Women on Wednesdays series that we do periodically during the semester to bring together voices about women in politics, women in the media, and women in sports. This is so much better than talking politics these days, right? So we're especially excited tonight to turn the spotlight on women's sports at a breakthrough moment. Our guest is Christine Brennan, an award-winning journalist, USA Today national sports columnist, and author of the brand new instant New York Times bestseller, On Her Game, Caitlyn Clark and the Revolution of Women's Sports. It's a terrific book. I'll remind you again, but we have books for sale outside, so Christine is going to stay afterwards and sign some, so please pick up a copy. The book really takes us inside Caitlyn Clark's meteoric rise from lighting up the scoreboard at Iowa to breaking college basketball's all-time scoring record, to selling out arenas and becoming the biggest box office draw in WNBA history. Most Taylor Swift-like, right? It also doesn't shy away from some of the tougher questions, the league dynamics, the rivalries, the complicated conversations about race, gender, and the media that have accompanied her ascent. So we're also joined by two very special AU basketball voices to help us put some context around this moment. Katie Benoit is the Deputy Athletics Director here. She leads strategy and operations for AU Athletics. Thank you, Katie, for being here. And Molly Driscoll, go Molly. She is a standout player on AU women's basketball team, and she knows firsthand what it means to compete and lead on the court. She's also a sophomore in Kogod School of Business. So thanks for being here, Molly. So together we're going to explore Caitlyn Clark's rise, what it means for women's basketball, the ripple effects, and we'll be sure to take your questions. So please we'll save some time for that. So please be thinking what you might want to ask. So with that, let's get started. Christine, congrats on the book. Tell us, first of all, why you decided to write the book at this moment, and who did you write it for?
Well, first of all, this is working
Should be
right?
on.
Yeah. Thanks, Betsy. And it's, no, did anyone introduce you? The absolute rock star. I mean, I guess they all know who you are, but seriously, I mean, before women were like taking over the world, mostly, right? And running so much in media, this woman was running one of the, maybe perhaps the greatest signature establishment media show and the best known in the and the longest established show in the country, Meet the Press. So, I mean, absolute rock star, Betsy.
Thank you for the friendship.
Sure. No, thank you. Yeah, let's hear for Betsy. And I can be the one guy in particular who's smiling right now, thinking about you and me and chatting about his show. Yeah. So the book, I've written, and it's great to see all of you. Great to be with both of you as well. And go AU, go Eagles. And I've written 7 books. And the last one I had written was a father-daughter memoir back in 2006. And so I was very happy not writing books because books really take over your life. An old boyfriend said, when you're writing a book, it's like you're under self-imposed house arrest, which is true. It's one of the reasons why he was an older boyfriend. And, but when you're doing a book tour, it's like you're running for office. And so I'm much more my personality is more book tour than book writing. So the idea of writing another book, I hadn't written one for a long time. I was enjoying what I do with USA Today, with TV, covering the Olympics, covering Tiger Woods, all the stuff that I've been lucky enough to do in my career. Okay. So this Caitlyn Clark thing, I'm not covering her. I'm not actually at any Iowa games. I live here. I'm a national sports columnist. I do attend events, but I wouldn't be covering an Iowa women's basketball game necessarily, or even the women's Final Four, although I'd covered them in the past. I just hadn't covered the two involving her. But I wrote a couple columns about Caitlyn, said she should definitely be on the Olympic team, and then I broke the news that she was not put on the U.S. Olympic team. Worst decision I've seen in my 41 years of covering the Olympics in terms of a team selection. And it looks worse today than it looked a year ago when it happened. And so I can get into all that in the book as well. But So I'd written columns on some of the issues involving Caitlyn Clark. Now the friction that we saw from Diana Taurasi and a couple other people towards her as she was coming to the WNBA. Some of the racial aspects, 74% Black league, white woman superstar, all the years that I covered the WNBA going back to the 90s. I wished it had been Maya Moore. I wish it had been Candace Parker that had been the superstar that everyone in the grocery store was talking about, but it wasn't. It's Caitlyn, right? So all those issues. But I wasn't even thinking of a book until I actually met her when the Olympic swimming trials were in Indianapolis. So your luck is a huge part of it. I'm in Indy to cover the U.S. Olympic swimming trials on my way to covering the Paris Olympics. But because it's Indianapolis, my editor said, could you go over to Couple Fever game, write some columns? I meet Caitlyn Clark through a connection with the Fever, 5 minutes. She's better than you'd hope for. We're about the same height. Couldn't be nicer, firm handshake, looks you in the eye, thanks you for your coverage, which you didn't have to do, but it was lovely. 22 going on 40 or 50. Just remarkable poise, kind, fabulous. Even then, I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking about this a little bit. Come home and had a phone conversation with an editor at Scribner. I'd worked for, my books were Scribner books, but it had been 19 years, as I said. And the next day, no book proposal, no plan, no nothing. I've got my suitcases, I'm packing to go to the Olympics. I get a call the next day with an offer. Do you want to write this book? No proposal, no plan, sight unseen. Here's the offer. And I said yes. And I just, as soon as I got back from Paris, I went right to Indy, of course, Paris to Indianapolis. That's obviously the trip everyone does. And then was with the Fever the rest of the way, had access to some practices, exclusive access. Caitlyn, I probably asked Caitlyn 50 questions. She answered every single one of them. Nothing was off limits. Again, looks you in the eye, goes on for a minute or two. So different from a guy like Tiger Woods, who just hated questions, didn't want to talk, moped the whole time. You know, Caitlyn is the complete opposite of him in this way, in terms of growing her sport and caring about being, giving back and working with the media. Anyway, and then I took time off and I wrote the book in 4 months. A quick book, you guys, is a year. So 4 months. So right at this time, I was totally freaking out. Wrote the book in basically November, December, January, February, making changes till the end of April, came out in early July, and then debuted at #2 on the New York Times bestseller list.
The Caitlyn Clark effect.
It is. Thank you, Caitlyn Clark. Yeah. But it truly was one of those things at this stage in my career. I think it goes to show all of you as you start to think about what your plan is as younger people. Like just when you think you're like, you've done it, or this is where you'll be in your career, or will there be, and then you have this path and you take it. And it turns out to be one of the most fun experiences of my career at this point. So anyway, yeah, that's basically the story.
So great. You call her rise a revolution. And I'm wondering, and you mentioned some of the players that came before her. What makes her story different?
I think she's an entertainer more than she's a basketball player, obviously. And you guys, basketball players here, clearly she plays basketball. But the way she plays the game, and I want to definitely hear what you guys have to say about it too, the way she plays the game entices people to watch the way Tiger Woods enticed people who couldn't tell you the difference between a birdie or a bogey, made sure grandmothers, grandfathers, people never played golf, made sure to change their Sunday afternoons to watch Tiger when he teed off on the final round of the Masters. She brings people to the sport. What is it? The entertainment value. When she's chucking it from the parking lot and it's going in, right? At Iowa, she did it in that 48 seconds, and when she came back from one of the injuries in June, literally 3 threes in, again, less than a minute. Just firing away, the speed with which she plays, the passing, which is extraordinary, all of that. It's the high wire act at the circus. So it brings far more people into the game, in my humble opinion, than, say, the play of Paige Bueckers, who is terrific, and she was Caitlyn before Caitlyn. She was the #1 ranked player in high school. Caitlyn was the #4 ranked player in high school. They grew up less than a 4-hour drive apart, so obviously a lot of good basketball right there in Minnesota and Iowa. But Paige Bueckers is a fantastic player. She may be maybe a better overall player than Caitlyn Clark. She doesn't move the needle at all in the WNBA. Sad to say, she's not sold out a 7,000-seat arena, Dallas's arena. She could not sell out a 7,000-seat arena one time this year. Again, I'm not bashing Paige. I'm just being brutally honest about the difference. Caitlyn Clark not only 17,000 seats out every night in Indiana last year, but also the highest ranked, and even this year too, the highest ranked road attendance, well above anything that Dallas would be, which is Paige Becker's or any other team. And the Fever, Betsy, unbelievable. Last year, Caitlyn Clark, her rookie year, which is what the book covers. It goes all the way through till April with the women's Final Four this year, but it's all about that first season. That the Caitlyn Clark and the Fever, their average home attendance was higher than the average home attendance of 5 NBA teams. In my lifetime, I never would have thought I could say that sentence. Caitlyn Clark and Paige Beckers or anyone else, Asia Wilson, I mean, these are great players, don't get me wrong. I am not saying they're not great players. Caitlyn Clark is in a different solar system from those players in terms of every way to quantify it. TV ratings, attendance, marketability, anything. Merch. Yeah, I mean, here comes the CC merch, right? That's coming in a couple days. So, and again, I'm not a fan. I'm a journalist.
Yeah.
But you just look at this and you go, I never thought in my lifetime I would see a female athlete be this popular, a team sport athlete. Yes, tennis. Serena, of course, covered her the length of her career. Fabulous person. Venus as well. Tennis, golf, Olympians. Katie Ledecky, of course, grew up right here. I covered her the length of her career as well. Simone Biles, amazing. But it's always been individual sports. Women's have never gotten their due as team sport athletes. And now Caitlyn Clark, I think she's not only one of the most famous athletes in the country, I think she's one of the most famous people in the country. And I think even while she's injured, which has been so strange and sad for her, disheartening, of course, she never was injured. Last time she missed a game, sophomore year of high school. And now she missed all but basically, 13 games this past year. But I think she's even more popular now. I mean, I think people are tuning in to watch her on the bench. I mean, again, and if you doubt, and you can say, oh, that Christine Brennan, here she goes again, or whatever, fine. In fact, if you disagree, please, I'd love to hear it. Think about this. University of Maryland, Iowa, well, forget Iowa, those are home games. But when Caitlyn was at Iowa, at Michigan, at Ohio State, at Maryland, at my alma mater, Northwestern, people standing in line for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours in January and February, snaking around the building like it's a Beyonce concert or a Taylor Swift or a Springsteen concert, or maybe North Carolina Duke men's basketball. They're standing in line in the cold to watch a woman play basketball. Again, things we never said until Caitlyn Clark.
Molly, let me bring you in here. What's it been like for you watching Caitlyn Clark's break records, sell out arenas, as a basketball player yourself?
I mean, like you were saying, a couple years ago, I would say women's basketball, they filled out like some high school arenas. They couldn't even fill out those. And then just watching the game develop from selling out those to then selling out like arenas like Madison Square Garden has been like detrimental for the game. Not only for like obviously for them, it's very good media and very good publicity, but then like for us as well. The rising generations of like women in sports, women athletics. It's huge because it brings them into the media and gives people something to talk about. So again, like people don't really talk about women's sports in a way that is interesting or fascinating to watch because it's just not something that has gone on in history. Until Caitlyn Clark, she pulls out. She's a very flashy player. She's an entertainer, and not only that, but she's consistent. Her consistency of all is, I think, what gives her the most attention because she has a good game. She pulls up from the parking lot and she makes it. Right. Then, all right, let's see her do it again. She does it again, and she does it multiple times in the game. It's consistent. So I think she has that kind of it factor where people are like, oh my God, like she's doing that again and again and again, which is why people need to watch her. People need to cancel afternoon plans to watch her. So it's been awesome. I mean, and I think it'll only grow from here, which is, can't ask for much more.
As a player, what can you take from her? What inspires you about her?
I mean, her game, obviously, but I think of all just the love of the game because she's someone who you can tell, like, her entire life, she loves basketball. There's people that play basketball, there's people that love basketball, and she loves basketball, so.
Katie, from your vantage point, have you seen that ripple effect of Caitlyn Clark and women's athletics even here on campus?
Yeah, I think it's funny. We were talking as we prepped for this panel. it made me go back and look at the numbers, and it is fascinating because I looked at our numbers really from our volleyball and women's basketball are our two ticketed sports for women here. And yeah, the past 3 years, people are watching women's sports. And I think that I would say, it's even pushed it beyond women's basketball. I know that's what we're talking about, but looking at our volleyball stats, we're up 18% over the last 3 years for average fan attendance at games. Women's basketball at American University over the past 3 years has gone up 55%. Here, we're not Iowa, we're not the Big Ten, and transparently with Molly here, we struggled last year. And yet still our numbers rise because people are interested, they want to go, they want to bring their families out, they want to watch this sport and pay attention in a way that they weren't thinking to before. It wasn't the option. Now it is. Patriot League, I asked them for their numbers, pulling in our postseason women's basketball, which is everybody. So that's a 7, 8 game, a 9-10 game overall, up consistently the past 3 years, up 15%, which is great. It's great to see that it is hitting everywhere. So yeah, it's nice.
That's great. Seeing you alluded to this a little earlier about the interviews that you had with Caitlyn Clark and how she kind of conducts herself in the media and how different that is. Where does that come from with her? And I mean, it's impressive, really is.
It is, and it's funny. I didn't know, as I said, I didn't know her, right? I had no connection whatsoever with her, and so I'm watching in my kitchen, right? Like on my iPad, the way you guys are watching her. In fact, the book starts with an anecdote about me watching her playing Indiana, again on my iPad. And it's just a regular season game. And I'm actually watching from the Indiana point of view because I went to Northwestern, but my 3 siblings all went to IU. Indiana was number 2 in the country. It's nice to see women's hoops at Indiana get attention. Yeah, clearly men's hoops has got attention forever at IU, as it should have been, Bobby Knight, et cetera. And so, I'm watching this and she hits one of those last second buzzer beaters. She's sideways, her legs are flying in the air, just heaves it into the air. It goes in, they win the game. It's one of those that you have to watch again and again, right? So she's appealing already, my mindset. In fact, this helped me, Betsy, a lot, I think, in understanding the phenomenon because I wasn't on press row, right? I wasn't, there are moments, newsflash, where journalists can become a little cynical. I know this is shocking to people, right? And everyone loves journalists so much right now, right? But we're human beings. Again, newsflash. And so if you picture me a mile or so away from here, in my kitchen, and I'm like watching this, and I've been very lucky in my career, like as you have, where we've been to a lot of places, traveled the world, a lot of press credentials, pretty cool, beyond my wildest dreams, and just amazing. I feel so fortunate. And I'm like, I want to immediately go to social media, Twitter, X, whatever, and I'm watching it 3 or 4 more times, right? And they're showing the replay anyway, but now I'm watching it again, and I'm a good friend of mine, he's a big basketball guy, but he's not a women's basketball guy. Not against it, I never heard from him about women's basketball. He's texting, did you just watch that? And so that was very interesting to me. She was very appealing as someone who I'm watching the way I watch you guys if I come to, which I will, come to one of your games or maybe more. You're just enjoying that moment. So I then, of course, started to watch more of the interviews and the things she did. And she really was very poised. Now, you're very poised. She's not the only, 20-year-old, whatever she was at the time, who's poised. So you then combine the poise and the interest, and now she's being interviewed more, and you're seeing her more. NIL, of course, comes into play, especially senior year. Now you're watching a game on TV, they go to a commercial, and there she is in the same uniform she's just been wearing on State Farm commercial, et cetera. There's more and more and more. So this is someone we've gotten to know very well, very quickly. And it's different from 10, 15 years and beyond, where we just would never have seen our college athletes like this. So in many ways, she's like a professional, right? Where she's very much like an NFL star, an NBA star, where you just really get to know her quickly. once I then got a chance to meet her and then ask, I was in every press conference, every press briefing. Some of it's just a scrum with her and a couple other people. And I am asking anything. There's no rules, and I would never, ever allow any rules. I mean, the Indiana Fever never did that.
Taking an issue off the table.
Right, or you can't ask her about this. No one said it, and you're the same as I am on this. If someone said, well, we're going to allow the interview, but you can't, then I would have said, yeah, we're not having an interview. There's no way. That's what journalism is. That's what the First Amendment. A lot of conversation about the First Amendment recently, isn't there? Including that incredible performance last night by Jimmy Kimmel. And, when you think about it, anyway, so anything. Here's a perfect example of how she handles herself. So I'm sure you all remember the one and only presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And Taylor Swift immediately put out that post, the Instagram post, not only endorsing Kamala Harris, but also encouraging everyone to vote. Within a few minutes after that, there was a story I saw on Twitter. It was Brian Stelter from CNN, who posted maybe not a story, but maybe just a post of famous people who had liked Taylor Swift's post, including Oprah, Jennifer Aniston, Kylie Kelsey, and Caitlyn Clark. So I'm working on the book. This is prime book time for me. I watched from home. I'm going to fly back to Indy the next day. There's another game. And so of course, now we have a pregame sit down with Caitlyn. That's the other thing. Shoot around before game, after game. I mean, most athletes, pro athletes, will be interviewed once a week, maybe twice a week. She was interviewed 3 times a day. And she said yes to everything. Yeah, incredible. So anyway, I, of course, asked a couple other journalists are there. They're all very, very young. And I understand it. That's okay. And I'll ask, you should always ask the tough question. You're not their friend. You're not the PR person. You're the journalist covering her. She has PR people. She has friends. They ain't me. I'm not there to be mean, but I'm there to, and she knows what I'm there for. There's no secret. I am writing a book. First thing I did was, when I got the book deal, was immediately call her agent and the Fever, and then had major conversations. They knew exactly what I was going to do. No secrecy, no beating around the bush, no hiding it. No, of course not. I would never do that, never have. You would have never done that, ever. But I do think sometimes we have to tell people this, not necessarily this crowd, because people assume the worst about journalism, right? So anyway, I asked her, and my question was simply this. I wasn't giving any indications I was going to ask it. The first question was about some corn maze with her face in it. So, okay, that was a positive. Here comes the downer, Christine Brennan, and it's going to ask. I said, I tried to make it a joke or smile. I said, as you know, there was a lot of attention on a certain post you liked yesterday. Tried to make it a little self-deprecating and fun. What did Taylor Swift's post mean to you? And are you potentially going to be endorsing Kamala Harris for president of the United States? I would never have thought I'd be asking a 22-year-old that question. This is Caitlyn Clark, folks. And it is a question that had to be asked. She brilliantly answered the first part of talking all about voting. She went on for about a minute. Again, she didn't mope. She didn't give me a side eye. She wasn't angry. She didn't say, looked at the PR guy, no more questions. No. And believe me, athletes have done all of that and more. She did the exact opposite. Looked me in the eye, didn't even take a deep breath. She had this. It's definitely important to vote. I voted last time. This will be my second vote. I encourage everyone to register. And that was her answer, and never even touched the second part. I know people then were critical of her. There were columns, not by me, but because I wasn't writing columns at that point. I was working on a book. But saying, how dare she not answer the second part of the question, right? If you're going to like that post, for all we know, you guys, she was, like half falling asleep and just liking whatever Taylor did, right? Who knows? But I don't know, so I give her the chance to answer. I never followed up. I was never critical. It was a perfect answer for a 22-year-old who doesn't need to get into every single thing. Also, I'm sure there are a lot of people who like Donald Trump, but guaranteed who vote for her. Probably a lot of people who like Donald Trump who bought my book. I don't know who buys my book or doesn't. She's a favorite of a lot of conservatives. There are a lot of conservative people in Iowa. She doesn't control any of that, right? She's not a political being. She is just doing what she wants to do. Having said that, her boyfriend, Conor McCaffrey, is a huge fan of the Obamas and likes everything. So he's out there doing all this stuff. But she's very smart about it. So I wondered, and someday I might ask her, way off, just later, was that a mistake? Like, did you not even read the whole post or what? But it's okay because she answered she didn't shy away from it, but she didn't go there. And as a 22-year-old, she does not need to go there.
Kate, let me ask you, because Christine mentioned NIL deals, and I wanted to ask you about NIL deals and Title IX, how they've reshaped the landscape and your sense of how these opportunities are playing out for women athletes.
Yeah, I mean, NIL has reshaped the college landscape, as Christine alluded to. We wouldn't have seen Caitlyn on a State Farm commercial prior to that. But it is fascinating because women actually tend to do really well in the NIL space because they are, what we've heard, is storytellers. They're very fascinating people. They're articulate, they present themselves very well, as Molly's doing tonight. And so people really get brought in by who they are as a person and how much more they are than just the athlete. So women are doing really well in the NIL space. Where I am concerned is sort of the head start that other sports have had, where it's easy and the money is already there in football and men's basketball. So there's a quick return on your investment there. You know that you might get a lot of eyes when you are putting money that way. And so grateful that NIL is coming at a time when women's sports are picking up so much steam, because I think it's undeniable that there's also a return on investment for investing in women's sports right now. And so a little scary because I think there's already some separation and the gap can get really wide, but I'm hopeful that it's a really good time and that women will, the attention being given to women, female athletes, women's sports will help keep them in the conversation. People like Caitlyn Clark, and when State Farm is seeing that was a good investment, who else should we invest in? Or, if I'm a rival of Indiana, then I want to have, I want to put Paige there so I can see what she can do head to head against Caitlyn and bringing in money. These are now professional athletes, but looking at college athletes, some of the top NIL winners are softball players, right? So for females, so it's interesting.
Yeah. Molly, how do you think about NIL and what it means for women's sports?
I mean, I think it's great. I think that any opportunity for anyone, specifically women's sports, to kind of get more money out of it, get more likeness, get more attention from it is great. I do think undeniably it is changing the game one way or the other. I mean, I think that the second it starts to get away from, I would say, the basketball aspect of it, it's like, oh, I can go to this school for this amount of money and then leave this school and go to this school and get that much more money. I think that's where I think the negative side of it, but I think overall it's great. I mean, it's awesome. And it's awesome how it's transforming from kind of just like it's very popular in men's sports right now, and now the women are reaping the benefits of it as well.
Christine, you mentioned the Olympic snub earlier, and I just wanted to get a sense from you on what the heck happened there, because you have some original reporting about it in the book.
Yeah. So for those, I think you mostly know, and I alluded to it, but of course the Olympic team was being picked. It's not like swimming where Katie Ledecky touches the wall
Qualified,
first. Second, then there's no decision making. It's just you touch or track and field, right? But for the teams like men's and women's basketball, even gymnastics, they'll kind of make some decisions and have some backroom wheeling and dealing depending on who they need for the balance beam or something. So this is not unusual that you have to, and people get left out. But this was the USA Basketball, the national governing body. They have a women's committee that picks the women's team, and you had someone like Lisa Leslie, another one of the greats in the WNBA, who actually was the first woman to dunk, and certainly was a very big star. Again, not Caitlyn-esque, but certainly a big star. And she said, you don't leave the country without Caitlyn Clark. It's a great quote, right? You do not leave the country without her when you go to Paris. Well, so anyway, this conversation is going. One of the key elements of this was that they were holding a spot for Diana Taurasi. Now, many of you, I'm sure, know the name Diana Taurasi. If you love basketball, you've watched her play. 42 years old, a legend, right? Taurasi is one of the greats. Also, great at just giving it to the refs and getting technicals, and just doesn't care what anyone thinks, which is, fabulous for journalists. I mean, she'll just say anything, including, like reality is coming for Caitlyn. And then, of course, she had to backtrack. She goes, yeah, reality was coming for me, she said. Very funny, finally, saying she was wrong on that. But they're holding the spot for her. I have never heard, and again, so fortunate to cover every Olympics from LA in '84 onward, as we now look at another LA Olympics coming. And I have never heard of an Olympic team, like, we're going to hold a spot for a 42-year-old, like as a going away present. That's insanity, ladies and gentlemen. Insane. You do not do this. This is not 5-year-old, all of you guys played your 5-year-old soccer and your 5-year-old t-ball and your 7 or 8-year-old basketball, right? And everyone got a little, no, this is the Olympics. So they did that. Caitlyn's statistics were better than Diana Taurasi's the day that they picked the teams. And Caitlyn that night had actually played here in DC. They moved from the 4,200 seat arena to the Capital One, over 20,000. She had 30 points. She had 7 threes. Fever were terrible at the time, and the Mystics were not good either. And the Fever won, I think, by 1 point. And then a couple hours later, I get a phone call from a source. How does this happen? This was in early June. I've been dealing with my sources since February. As I say, in my kitchen, I'm watching on my iPad. I thought, hey, I'll write a column. I started talking to sources about this Olympic decision. And even then, Betsy, I started hearing, I don't know, maybe not. I was like, what do you mean you don't know? They often, as some of you may know, they often take a collegian. Women for sure, Rebecca Lobo, Taurasi, Brianna Stewart, all as collegiate players or graduates made the Olympic team. Even the men's side, Christian Leitner, that didn't go well, but Christian Leitner was on the U.S. men's Olympic team. So what is that? That's a nod to the collegiate game, right? That's thank you. This is about USA basketball. It's about growing the game. It's about the future. That collegiate player's not going to play much. Can be sitting the bench. Caitlyn would have sat the bench a lot, and they were concerned, like, would her fans get mad about that? And when I report on that as well, like, when is that a determining factor to pick a player that you're worried about social media? They were off the rails from the get-go. So in the book, it's called Olympic Snub. And basically, they decided early on they did not want Caitlyn Clark on the team, and they did everything possible to make sure that the committee wouldn't pick her. Then, members of the committee, including the great Dawn Staley, she goes on NBC at the Olympics and said, wow, if we'd all known she was going to play this well, we would have picked her. Well, you're the biggest basketball minds in women's basketball. You're all, like, brilliant. You couldn't see they were guarding her the length of the court? You couldn't see that in the third game of her career, she was already nailing threes and running the offense? That was from May 14th to May 18th? That's how long it took her? Somehow they just wanted to focus on negatives, focus on turnovers. Yes, there were a lot of turnovers, risk reward, right? But also, when you're guarding someone, she was being guarded like a 15-year veteran. When they're picking her up, literally, and on her in her face, 96 feet, that's the length of the court, that is the ultimate respect. And somehow the committee goes, well, then her stats aren't good enough, even though her stats were better than Taurasi. They did put Taurasi on the team. Her stats were also better than at least one other player who was injured the whole time. It was just a joke, but it did allow me to have one of my favorite lines in the book, which was I was able to say, if you watch the Olympics, the U.S. almost lost, which would have been terrible. Would have been good for those who were mad about Caitlyn, but bad because you would like to see the U.S. win no matter what. So they won by 1 over France, a ragged game. And Caitlyn Clark and Diana Taurasi both played the same number of minutes and scored the same number of points in that gold medal game. 0 and 0. One was sitting on the bench in Paris. The other was 4,000 miles away in the United States. So Diana Taurasi was important. She didn't even play in the most important game.
Molly, do you remember when you heard about her not making the team?
I do, yes, I do. And it still doesn't really make any sense to me, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, to take arguably one of the best, well, the best upcoming women's basketball player and completely disregard her holding a spot for, yes, a vet, but who has respect in the league, who has respect in women's sports. But, I mean, if you're just looking at the numbers, if you're just looking at what's best for the USA team, there's no doubt you go with Caitlyn Clark. There's no doubt.
Yeah, it made no sense at all. But you also write about the WNBA being totally unprepared for
Totally.
the Caitlyn Clark phenomenon.
Yeah, and
Some of the disparities that existed between what you would normally do for a male athlete versus a female athlete, the kind of treatment that was
without a doubt.
Security and everything else.
Well, and yes, and so the anecdote that really tells it all, as you will recall, Caitlyn announced she had a fifth COVID year if she wanted it, and I think if Indiana didn't have the first pick, I think she would have maybe gone back. Would have been weird because like Kate Martin and Gabby Marshall would have been gone, but no one would have been more loved than that fifth year for her in Iowa, right? But pressure too. They made it to 2 final games, so she'd done it all. But because Indiana and Indiana Fever with the Pacers, they were ready for her because it's the NBA and the WNBA working together. So you've got the social media team, you've got the merchandise, you've got the billboards and all that. So she decided to turn pro. That next day, I called an official within the WNBA I've known for years, just to chat. And that's what journalists do a lot too, where we'll just I may be writing a column, I may not be, but you just talk to people. Right. I mean, in fact, that's the best journalism there is. It's a people business, and you get to know people, and you talk to them. For those who are maybe future journalists here and media people in the audience, and so I called this friend, or I'd say friend, acquaintance, who I've known forever, and I said, hey, do you realize how big a deal this is? Caitlyn now declaring that she's going to go into the draft. Do you realize how big a deal this is? And this person said to me, WNBA official, goes, yeah, it's the biggest thing to happen to the WNBA since Maya Moore. Now, Maya Moore is one of the greatest ever. 4-time WNBA champ, 2-time NCAA champ at UConn, and also one of the greatest people ever. She retired and made it her life's work to have a man who was unjustly imprisoned get out of prison, and she ended up marrying him, and they have a child. So we are talking this stuff of made-for-TV movies, right? What a terrific American Maya Moore is, and also a fabulous basketball player. She could not sell out UConn's arena. Again, great, but nowhere near what Caitlyn Clark is. So I kind of laugh, not at Maya Moore by any means, but at the thought of, wait a minute, this WNBA official, yeah, like this is the biggest thing since Maya Moore. I said, oh, I think it's like 10,000 times bigger than Maya Moore. Oh, yeah, kind of then giggled and kind of nervous laughter. You guys, they had absolutely no idea what was coming. So what we talked about earlier, the lines, my nieces were in line we had 9, 10 members of my family at the Maryland game. When Iowa came to Maryland, it was like going to a concert. The traffic on the Beltway. I mean, did they not see that? Did the WNBA not see? And in the book, I never put anything in the book, just the way that you would run your TV show, where I didn't know it. So I ask a couple questions because I couldn't find the answer of the exact reason why. I give you anecdotes, you can then use those to form, obviously I tell you a lot of things in the book, but if I didn't know, I would never just write it. I would have to know it and have it sourced and 2 or 3 sources. But I do ask, maybe because they'd always gotten short shrift from the male-dominated mainstream sports media. Always. I'd fight for it. I'd be on a radio show and people would be laughing. Oh, the WNBA, they're just rolling around the floor and it's only jump balls. And I'd be on radio arguing with these, jerks about, no, it's actually, these are great athletes, right? But maybe they just thought it would never happen to them, that it was happening in college in Iowa, right? Big Ten, strong Big Ten, and then it wouldn't happen in college, in the pros. Whatever it was, no idea. And yes, now you've got one of the most famous people in the country, certainly one of the most famous athletes in the country, if not the most famous, and they're making her fly commercial. So you've got charter flights for the NBA, for everyone flies charter. Do you guys fly charter? You don't, but bigger, no, well, understood.
Yeah.
But big, yeah, there you go. But Iowa, Maryland, they all fly charter, right? So if you are, at the very top of D1, they're flying charter, men's and women's sport, basketball, not all the sports, but certainly basketball. And so Caitlyn has been on charters for her 4 years of Iowa. And now they're hiding her at the window seat. And she's going through the contest. They had to do that for one game. And the pictures of her walking through baggage claim at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. She looked like an animal at the zoo, right? The videos, you could see the guy's video, you could see one video and the guy's in the background, and then you could see his video with the other guy in the background. And there's a security person walking along. But at this point, she's out of security. It's Dallas, it's Texas, open carry. I mean, whatever you could envision. How about a group of, a softball team traveling, and they get so excited, they come rushing over, and then someone lands on her ankle, right? Trips or whatever. I mean, you would never do this, to your point, for the NBA, anyway. So I just made a phone call again. You just pick up the phone or whatever, use your phone, and I called someone at the NBA. I said, what are you guys doing? I'm going to write a column just saying, you're playing with fire here. And they hadn't even thought of it. And the NBA owns 60% of the WNBA. So that's why the NBA is a part of the story. And anyway, that was on a Friday in May of 2024. And I'm just asking the question. And I wanted to give this person a chance to tell me what I was missing, right? As a journalist, what am I missing? I'm going to write a column that's critical, but you tell me what you think. Talk me out of it, in other words. If you want, again, we all do this all the time, back and forth. And he goes, do you have to write it right now? It was like a Friday afternoon. I said, no. In fact, I was going to watch Angel Reese have to go through airports, right? And it had happened with Brittany Griner, who'd just gotten back from being imprisoned by Vladimir Putin, that awful, awful situation in Russia. And then she did get accosted by a right-wing agitator in the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. Terrible. And yet the WNBA hadn't even had charters for her until that moment. So what would happen? Caitlyn could have gotten something, but now let's make it's worse for Black women, obviously. And so what would happen to Angel, potentially? So I was going to watch. Anyway, he said, if you don't mind, give me a couple days. Okay, not sure what I'm giving him a few days for, no big deal. Monday, he calls me and says, hey, we're going to have charter flights and you're going to break it. I said, what? They had no charter flights. They never thought about it. They hadn't talked about it. Caitlyn's coming since February 28th. It's now early May. She's already had to go through, a TSA pre-check and walk through the concourse and have all her players around her so that no one comes running up to her and kind of hide her and pull her hood over her head. And now you've decided to do this? They would never, you guys, have done that with a men's pro sport, right? So, and now, of course, they have charter flights. So I would never take credit and say it was my question ever, and I don't in the book, but I tell this story in the book, like, what on earth, who is running this league, right? Who on earth? But yes, now they have charter flights forevermore, yeah?
So we're going to take some questions in a minute, but I just wanted to ask Molly and Katie, if Caitlyn Clark is kind of the spark, what is the fuel that kind of keeps this going for women's sports now, in your opinion? Start with you, Katie, and then we'll go to Molly.
Sure, I think all it took was a spark, because there was talent in the WNBA, right? She couldn't have gone there and not been seeing competition and having games that people want to watch because they are 1-point games or they're, in it. So I think she was the spark, but the substance has already been there, and now people are just tuning in. So
what can universities do as you think about in your role as athletics, and how do we kind of foster that?
I think continue to invest in it and continue to really dream big, right? Fill a football stadium to watch a basketball game or a volleyball game, because it's not, we've seen that it can happen, right? Don't keep them in the auxiliary gym where they can't sell more than 750 seats. Put them in the arenas and see what can happen. I think continue to promote it, advertise it, grow the fan base, because I mean the talent's there. It's just now people are watching.
Exactly. Capitalize on it. Molly, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. There's already been a spark, and as we can see, it only really took one well-known individual to sell a stadium. So again, I think it's a majority is just publicity. The more people that watch it, more people hear about it, more people want to see what's going on, see what they're missing. The more views we'll get, more popular we get, and then also just highlighting young talent. There's a lot of upcoming rookies, upcoming high school players that play a lot like Caitlyn Clark, that are very, very good at basketball and can bring a lot to the league and collegiate athletics. So I think just continuing to highlight those players and what's upcoming will keep it going.
Okay, who has any questions? We have a mic coming around. I see two hands up toward the front here.
Hi, well, first of all, thank you for sharing your stories. Love hearing what you guys had to say. Um, I was a college volleyball player, so top of mind for me is, of course, the Nebraska volleyball phenomenon. They not only sold out their Nebraska football stadium, which had 90,000 seats, but they set the world record for a women's sports event in terms of attendance. So I'm wondering, like, seeing the ripple effect that's had in women's volleyball and other female gym sports. Do you think that's like a replicable environment, or like how do you see athletic departments following suit there?
Oh, I think is what we're hearing and we're seeing is absolutely you can do more. Certainly those I'm a big volleyball fan because I have a niece who's a great volleyball player as well, and so it's a great sport, right? And I know the basketball people don't want to hear about all the basketball players who end up going and playing volleyball. I guess or reverse as well, but it's true. It's truly clearly that was extraordinary. But it's Nebraska, but it's also like Creighton. When they play they had a sellout, didn't they, a couple weeks ago? I saw on Instagram. It's Wisconsin. Obviously, schools around the country. So I think it's just the innovation of the athletic directors who say, okay, we're going to try this. Not necessarily 90,000 seat stadium, right? But could you put a volleyball match or a basketball game, on and outdoors, or you have these unique ideas, and we're going to see it because the spark is there, the innovation is there, and even the naysayers. And you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but even like the guys, we'll say guys, we love you guys, but the guys, maybe old school, like the ones who didn't like Title IX, most of them, are probably gone or maybe even like dead by now. But, I'm thinking of Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler and all those old school guys that didn't want women playing sports and didn't want women getting the same size letter M as the Michigan football players, which is true, and I have that in the book. All those things about not wanting women, and again, that's a long time ago. But there's a new, younger group of male leaders, as well as, of course, the incredible group of female leaders now. But those men were raised in a very different way than their fathers or their grandfathers in terms of respecting women's sports. So hopefully they're thinking that way. And I would say this, and for fans, let them know that you're there. For us, when I was at the Post, I'm sure you felt this way at NBC, but now at USA Today, and if an email or two comes into a sports editor about a topic, it's like, wait a minute. And you're probably saying only one or two emails, like, oh, really? No, because normally there's 0 emails. So, you'll hear from the wrestling fans if you don't have the wrestling scores, but we never hear from the women's sports fans about the women's scores. Well, call, email. If you're watching, now.
Something, say something, right?
If you're watching the 11 p.m. sportscast here in town, and yes, it's the Commanders, of course, but if there's let's say you guys had, win 4 in a row and they don't even mention AU women's hoops, call them up. Put a message on, instant message, direct message them. Put something under their Twitter X feed. Raise your voices because you actually have power to tell those of us in the media and also those people in power what is important to you.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because when Christine was talking about how we hadn't really seen this in team sports, and I still think with volleyball, you're watching volleyball, right? We don't have necessarily a Caitlyn Clark, but I think we're primed for it now. And people might find that favorite player and see what media attention can come, and that's going to be even, take it to the next level. So I think that's great, and I can't wait for it to come. And yeah, I think Christine is right. Voice your opinion. Anecdotally, a couple of years ago, searching Iowa basketball schedule, and it showed the men's schedule. And it was like, why in the world right now, if someone is Googling Iowa basketball schedules, would they think I was looking for the men's team schedule? I don't know who to call to change my Google Analytics, but, so I think continuing to just be like, no, the women are who I want to watch. They're the exciting thing right now. That's who I want to drive. Yeah, I think show up show that we need a bigger arena, show that we need, you know, more merch, more Molly Driscoll merch, right?
I'll buy my Molly Driscoll. What can I buy?
I'll send you the link.
Oh, good. How great is that? The fact that, of course, there's a link.
Often the best ideas come from people that are in the middle of it and the young people, Molly. What do you think about innovation and drawing people to the sport and what we should be doing?
Yeah, definitely, obviously voice your opinion, but I think a lot of it comes from, I think a majority of it could come from the athletes themselves. You know, especially on a smaller campus like this, a majority of the people who I would say come are supporters of the players. So kind of just like reach out, let them know like, hey, we got a game, or like again, we go in the cafeteria, we give out flyers. So a majority of like the publicity and like the fans that come could be just the athletes, friends, like support system.
And your season starts in November, so note everybody and
Remember,
check out the schedule. November 8th. Who's the first
home
team?
game.
Do you know?
You guys playing?
Okay, there we go.
And what's the date? November 8th.
Everybody to
Okay,
be there.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yes, Saturday
Yeah.
afternoon. Okay.
Great. Who else has a question? Yeah, we have one up here with a great T-shirt. Everyone watches women's sports.
It's just not a great mic, so project.
I was wondering what you think that Caitlyn Clark's race and sexuality have to play in her popularity, because I know you had mentioned that you hadn't really seen anything like this in team sports before, but I kind of like relate her to Alex Morgan a little bit in a way with women's soccer and how she wasn't necessarily the greatest player on our team. I think Abby Wambach was, but she obviously is like an out lesbian woman. Megan Rapinoe, same thing. So I was just kind of wondering how you think like the intersectionality of that plays a role and how her popularity has drawn not only women but also men into the sport of women's basketball.
Absolutely. You know, great question. I deal with this in the book, and I did. I don't shy away, obviously, you know, from anything, of course, in the book. I mentioned earlier, 74% Black league. I wanted to find out what the percentage was of gay women to straight women in the league. There's no statistic there. I quote Jamel Hill, who's a friend of mine. She and I actually did some event for our Women Association for Women in Sports Media, which, by the way, we can talk about that if any of you are interested in joining, or just follow us on Twitter and X, etc. And Jamel said she thought her estimate was a third of the women are gay. So I quote Jamel in the book. That's the best thing. In fact, I said to the person who does the surveys on race, I said, why don't you guys do, you know, gender or sexual identity, you know, whatever, you know, and he said, oh, we'd love to. It's just, you know, timing and getting the right people to talk. And I'm sure it's a little harder, obviously, with some people if they don't want to talk about it, but you could just have a don't know, you know, you could have whatever they say, and then the third category of did not answer. That's fine too. Anyway, did my best. So there is no doubt that Caitlyn Clark's race, for sure, I mean, again, what I know and what I don't know, but it certainly makes her more appealing to a segment of our population, and it may be a big segment of our population, right? And as I said, it is too bad, this is my opinion, this is not my reporting, but it is too bad that this didn't happen for the WNBA when the great Maya Moore was playing, or Lisa Leslie, as I mentioned, or Candace Parker. They're big names. You know these names. You guys know these names. But let's just walk out on the street, you know, head out Nebraska Avenue and just wander down New Mexico Avenue or something and find 10 people and ask them to name a female basketball player, and we're probably going to get 10 out of 10 Caitlyn Clark, right? And if you said, do you know who Maya Moore is, the answer would probably be no. I'm not talking about in an arena. I'm talking about just out on the street. So it didn't happen there. Now, absolutely, is racism involved? For sure. I mean, I think everyone in this room, we know the answer is yes. Also, all of this is happening last year, set against the backdrop of arguably the most polarizing election we have ever had. Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, race, gender, transgender, all right, everything, right? We've got it all. So I deal with that as best as I can. I would have loved to have more answers, and I'd love to have more answers for you. And I am not shying away from it, and I'm also not giving up on that issue. But I think the other flip side is, the way I look at it, and it's easy for me to do this as a white woman who's never lived 1 second as a black person. And again, I've said this on book tour around the country over and over again. I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. I decided that one of the main things I wanted to do was have so many voices in this book that included terrific, wonderful, important, smart voices from the Black community. So Dr. Harry Edwards, many of you may not have heard of him, great civil rights advocate, Black man, actually fighting cancer, and still doing okay. But he is, if you ever read or heard about the 1968 Mexico City Olympics, the Black Power salute of the two sprinters, Dr. Harry Edwards was the impetus for that. So I interviewed him. I said, I want your voice about this Caitlyn Clark phenomenon. White woman comes into a 74% Black league. And what Dr. Harry Edwards, first of all, said, he loves Caitlyn Clark, loves to watch her play. And he said the WNBA failed the players. Because he said, of course, to your point that you just asked, you nailed it. How does the WNBA not see this coming? And not because these women are damsels in distress. No, they're you guys. Great, well-educated women, Title IX, tough as nails, right? But this is so unusual that we are now going to see a league be lifted up by one person who is so different from the vast majority of the league, even though that's not Caitlyn's fault. Of course it's not. It has nothing to do with her per se. And the WNBA, what Harry Edwards said, have seminars, have Zooms, have each team say to a player, is this like, let's talk. You can talk to Harry Edwards. You can have a conversation, not that it would all go away right away, but discuss it before the season started. Also be ready for the social media impact, because this is now like the NFL or Major League Baseball, where you're going to get pummeled. That's how they weren't prepared for that. So of course, Caitlyn, Aaliyah Boston, all of them just went off social media. I mean, Aaliyah Boston was just getting, she's a wonderful person, right? Great player, just getting pummeled by racist people or whatever. Caitlyn was getting pummeled by people who hated Caitlyn. They all went off social media, but how that wasn't prepared. And then we talked, talking about soccer, Brianna Scurry, the goalkeeper from the '99 women's soccer team, good friend of mine, wonderful person, the first Black superstar on the most important team on earth, the most important women's team on earth, the women's soccer team. She said the same thing, that as I've got her voice in the book, like to the players, yes, this isn't easy, but this is the moment. Don't shy away from this moment, because here's what's happening. The spotlight shining on Caitlyn Clark is finally now shining on A'ja Wilson. Everyone knows who A'ja Wilson is, much more than they ever knew before. You can tell by the All-Star votes. You can tell by the endorsements. So many of these players, Kelsey Mitchell, if you're watching The Fever or not, Kelsey Mitchell never, I dare say like 1% of people in the country knew who Kelsey Mitchell was. Kelsey Mitchell is now getting endorsement deals. They're all getting endorsement deals because they hang out with Caitlyn Clark. This is not negative, but we can understand how the players were not prepared for it. So I blame, and I continue to look at the WNBA, the lack of leadership, the void. We are now 2 years into the biggest thing to ever happen in women's team sports, the Caitlyn Clark era. And 2 years in, they still are absolutely just missing in action as leaders at this crucial moment in women's sports. Not that I have an opinion or anything.
Who else has a question?
Thanks, everybody. As a former journalist myself, so Christine, thank you so much for giving some good background into the world of journalism, and obviously you, Betsy. But now I work with a lot of sports brands, leagues, professional athletes in my current role. And a lot of our clients are asking us, when do we expect the headline of women's athlete or women's sports to go away? And I'm curious, Christine, if you encounter this in your book, but when will that be just a non-issue?
You mean like the first for women or whatever?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, on one hand, I think we should use adjectives on both. I know that's not specifically, but we should be saying what you said. It should be the Iowa men's team, the Iowa women's team, and more it is. It is now the men's Final Four. I fought for that, wrote columns criticizing it. How do you call it the Final Four and then the women's Final Four, right? Because it's like, or like, we're going to the Maryland game. Which one? Yeah. Because, of course, it was, we're the Maryland men's, right? Yeah. Even though Brenda Fries is winning a lot more than whoever the men's coach is now in Maryland. I'm not being disrespectful, I just off the top of my head. But Brenda Fries has been there forever, obviously. So, we want to use that adjective on both. And we do, even on the crawl on ESPN. Years ago, again, someone in the media was pummeling and giving them a hard time. It might be someone who's you're looking at, and they didn't like me. But I said, why aren't we calling it? They're calling it B-ball and then WB ball, and then they did change it to MB ball or MBB and WBB. So that's it. I think it's going to be a while yet because it is the underrepresented gender, right? It's still newer, it's fresher. Every league, of course, the WNBA started in '97. The NBA started in the 30s. My goodness, we're going to have the World Cup next year. I'm going to call it the Men's World Cup as much as I can. The official title is the World Cup, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world. That is not misogyny. It's just the name of it. But, that started, again, in the 1930s, I think, men's soccer. The Women's World Cup started in 1991. So it's just newer. It's fresher. But each day that goes by, with more and more men wearing number 22 jerseys, guys who would never have given the time of day to women's sports, who would have laughed at it 20 years ago. And they're not wearing the 22 jersey.
Line and everything else, right?
And with their daughter or with their son.
Yeah.
And the boys wearing the 22 jersey. I'm going to guess the guys here, I'm not picking on you. I'm going to guess probably when you were growing up, like the idea of wearing a woman's jersey might not have been the greatest thought. Or if you had, or your dads might have said like, I'm not sure about that. Well, now boys don't even care about it. Maybe, again, I'm thinking guys, boys younger than, younger than you, of course, young men younger than you. But we cannot underestimate, ladies and gentlemen, how big a deal that is, that these big guys that I saw at the Fever game wearing the number 22 jersey, not just to the game, but to the grocery store and the gas station. That is a sea change. So we're getting there. But it's obviously not going to happen overnight. But thanks for your good work. Appreciate it.
Katie, are these things that you all think about too?
Yeah, it's so funny because in college we have both teams. We were always, using women's and men's because we have both teams. We support both teams, and we're talking about both teams. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I think that's a great question. I loved it, but part of it is I was thinking, like, I hope they're keeping more first for a little while now. Not a long while. I hope we keep breaking new records and hitting new benchmarks. But yeah, I think we do a good job in college because we are representing both teams and we are pushing our brand across.
Molly, let me ask you, is there something that you think that either the media or fans should better understand about being a women's basketball player?
Yeah, I think just from like a broader standpoint, it's the same game, it's the same rules, same points, same whatever. Meaning it's the same process. It's the same 6 a.m. lifts, it's the same diet, it's the same grind overall. So I think it's important that that's recognized, and the more it is recognized, the more obviously like publicity will come to WNBA. But like everything that goes into the NBA, and obviously everybody watches the NBA, the exact same stuff goes into the WNBA and women's sports. So I think that is the most important thing for the fans to realize.
Put. I want to let everybody know before we leave is that we have some refreshments in the back. Again, Christine is going to stay and sign books. We have a bookseller outside the door. If you'd like to get a book, she's going to sign anybody's book that would like. And
Or as many as you want.
yeah,
It's great for
exactly,
holiday gifts.
holiday gifts. And please joining me in thanking our great panel for being here today. And yeah, go AU women's basketball.